Stand down, Rogue.
Skip the hogwash and tell me what America's top cop is doing all the way out here.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full X-Men 97 Episode 7 video. There are so many Easter eggs and references. They finally revealed a lot of what's going on in the show and what's going to be happening during the finale. Not all the secrets, but they gave us a lot. A lot of what they're doing are based on some very notable comic book runs. Some of you actually guessed some of this earlier on, and it confirms some of my theories about how they were including the Bastion character, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. It is just the beginning. There's going to be at least 3 seasons, so very clearly the finale is going to tease some big WTF cliffhanger pushing into season 2. So even though there's all this big stuff they're building to in the last couple of episodes, it's only the beginning. Careful for spoilers. If you haven't seen the episode yet, we'll start at the beginning, work our way through shot by shot, talking about Easter eggs, WTF moments, all the big comic book stuff they're adapting for the episode. Starting with the title, the episode was called Bright Eyes, a reference to Rogue and Cable's first meeting during the original X-Men the Animated Series. It's largely a reference to Cable, but that's what Rogue called him the first time they met.
Remember me, Bright Eyes?
The whole idea when they faced Cable the first time, they thought that he was a villain. They didn't fully understand what he was doing. He was coming back into the past to try and prevent the Days of Future Past timeline from coming to pass, so then they wound up working together. And they also revealed in this episode that during all those Cable crossovers, every time he worked with the X-Men, none of them ever actually wound up learning the truth about who he really was. Not until this episode when Jean Grey read his mind. So it comes full circle. Bright Eyes shows up again as part of a very similar or slightly different version of that original storyline with him trying to prevent the Days of Future Past timeline from coming to pass. This time they essentially reveal that Bastion is trying to bring about an even worse version of that, slightly different but same basic idea, like a very post-apocalyptic type of Days of Future Past timeline.
So long as you don't resist, simply listen and obey.
This time the twist, though, is that he plans to turn everybody, all of humanity, essentially into Prime Sentinels, which is right out of the Operation Zero Tolerance storyline in the comics, and you notice they're using the next 3 episodes for a 3-part finale titled Tolerance is Extinction. I think that's going to be a combination of E is for Extinction and Operation Zero Tolerance. They also revealed that it's Theo James doing the voice for Bastion. They said that he'd be voicing someone big this season, but they didn't tell us literally until the episode actually aired because it would have been a big spoiler. There are a couple Easter eggs for Bastion on Forge's wall in the background. I'll get to that when we talk about him later in the episode when he eventually does show up, because there's a bunch of different storylines that they're tying together from the original X-Men the Animated Series. But this time at the beginning of the episode, they let Rogue do the previously on X-Men for the recap, and the Marvel intro starts with that same quiet heartbeat sound too.
Previously on X-Men.
They don't really make that many changes to the X-Men intro this time, like Magneto was still removed because they still think that he's dead, but we obviously know the difference. He's still alive. We see him at the end of the episode. They did add back the Gambit scene kissing Rogue, I think mostly to reference him being a big part of the episode, even though he's technically dead. They think that he's dead during the episode. I'll get to that too, because we just found out another way that he could potentially come back. Like, there are so many different ways. We're talking about the comics here, obviously. But literally, one of Bastion's powers is bringing people back from the dead.
Coincidence? I think not!
They still have that scene of Cable fighting Apocalypse, which is kind of weird. We haven't seen Apocalypse in the episodes yet, and this episode only briefly hints at his potential involvement. There's an Easter egg tying Bastion to Apocalypse on Forge's wall. I'll get to that in a second. Right now, the show just really wants you to think of Bastion being the one behind everything, but I don't think that Apocalypse is totally absent from all of this. But even though this episode was meant to be a big Bastion reveal episode, revealing his plan with the Prime Sentinels, it was also a big Rogue episode too. It fixed a lot of my issues with the live-action depiction of Rogue in the X-Men movies so far. She's crazy powerful. You really see her go unchained in this episode. She goes so hard. But all the movies have never bothered to take Rogue to that place. By the events of X-Men 3 Last Stand, she was relegated to being a simple love interest, and then she was totally cut from Days of Future Past. She was added back in for the Rogue cut, but even then, it was still a very small role. Like, she barely did anything in that movie. They never really gave her the opportunity to show the extent of her powers the way that they have on X-Men the Animated Series. Like, that version of Rogue is the superior version of Rogue. So really happy with the way they're treating the Rogue character on the show so far. They start the opening scene at Gambit's funeral with the X-Men there with people from Gambit's past. This is Belladonna, this is Gambit's brother, Robert LeBeau, this is Pierre. They're all from the Thieves Guild as part of Gambit's backstory episode, teasing his troubled upbringing in New Orleans. Of course, Nightcrawler is presiding over the burial ceremony because he's an ordained minister and he's very religious. This picture of Gambit in the wreath is based on the comics with his cards. Nightcrawler's sermon heavily references gambling, playing cards, odds, all the things that Gambit would reference all the time when he was alive. Like, he literally references the odds in cards when he was fighting the Sentinel.
The cards always be in my favor.
Nightcrawler really nails the essence of Gambit's character. Like, he always felt like he wasn't worthy of the X-Men. He felt shameful of his past, never living up to his true potential. He always felt like he was never truly worthy of Rogue, even though he was. Like, he never believed in his own potential. You notice that Rogue is not there, Jubilee has no idea what's going on, and Wolverine kind of has to explain to her how grief works. Like, no, kid, she's dealing with this in her own way. And they cut to Rogue flying through the desert, attacking another military base. Turns out it's a military base designed to withstand the Hulk because it's occupied by General Thunderbolt Ross. All these action scenes of Rogue using her powers are just super OP, wrecking everything in sight, just go full anime. Love the way they animate this. Now, because we have the Thunderbolt Ross cameo scene, really hoping we get another Hulk cameo scene. If you don't remember, Hulk is canon to X-Men the Animated Series. He showed up during a big Juggernaut episode. They fought each other like Hulk versus Juggernaut, really hoping that we actually get to see that in live action at some point. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll see some Hulk versus Wolverine action by Secret Wars. When Thunderbolt Ross gets super overconfident saying the facility is strong enough to withstand the Hulk, the joke there is also that they've just not seen the Hulk mad enough to get strong enough to destroy it. Cue Rogue destroying it in seconds flat. It's very reminiscent of that scene during the original Avengers movie where Nick Fury is touting the strength of the Hulk prison, like, we designed this to hold the Hulk, but then it's promptly broken later in the movie. This is all meant to be part of the storyline of Rogue tracking down Gyrich and Trask because they're their best leads, they're behind the Sentinels, they assume that they're behind the attack on Genosha. We've learned, though, that they become pawns of Mr. Sinister and Bastion by association. Then we get a scene of Cyclops talking to Robert Kelly, who is the President of the United States within the original series. There was a big Cable storyline during the original animated series where he was coming back into the past to try and prevent his assassination as part of preventing the Days of Future Past timeline. So very apropos that he shows up in this episode where Cable comes back to do kind of the same thing, only it's a slightly different, very, very bad future he's trying to prevent. But Bastion using his knowledge of the future to try and do things better than the villains of old did. Don't worry, we'll get to that too, because Bastion is very clearly from the future. Notice he makes a Cyclops visor pun, referencing the optics of the situation, pissing Cyclops off. The whole idea is it sounds like it's an election year. He doesn't want to piss his voters off, like he says, so he doesn't want to support the mutants the way that Cyclops wants his support. It seems like they were using a lot of scenes like this scene here and later in the episode to radicalize some of the X-Men characters. I think they're slowly teasing Cyclops taking Magneto's side in all this and being a little bit more like the Brotherhood of Mutants, like more anti-human. He literally calls out Magneto being right about everything the whole time, like we should have listened to him a long time ago. So I would not be surprised if Cyclops winds up quitting the X-Men at the end of the season. He and Jean Grey start talking again. She references Madeline Pryor, she references Cable, then they take the Blackbird to the wreckage of Genosha. All these things sort of foreshadowing what happens later in the episode. When they arrive, Beast quotes Mr. Rogers.
Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. The ever affable Mr. Rogers.
This person they talk to is Amelia Vaught from the original series. Her power is being able to turn herself into vapor, as you see here. She goes way back with Professor X. She actually knew him right after he was crippled and lost the ability to walk. He talks to Patricia Tilby. The reason why he's glad to see her and why she's covering this is because he used to have a relationship with her, and it seems like she actually cares about mutants, so she's not there just for sensationalism or for ratings. Then they cut to Rogue versus Captain America. I'm actually surprised by this. I thought the yellow boot was actually going to be Cyclops versus Captain America, but this is just all part of Rogue's tear going across the country looking for Gyrich. You notice his motorcycle here at this abandoned base, and he throws his shield at her, which she then picks up. A lot of Rogue with Captain America's shield during this part of the episode.
Stand down, Rogue. Please.
When they actually reveal him, they play the Captain America theme from the classic episodes. Like, it's not the MCU Captain America theme, it's from the original series. The reason why Captain America is canon to X-Men the Animated Series is because he actually worked with Wolverine in flashbacks during World War II against Red Skull. But part of the idea here is Rogue sort of calling him out, calling him a glorified police officer. Basically, he's on the side of the government, like he wants to wait for government approval before they go after Trask and Gyrich, and Rogue obviously does not. When they go down into the hidden base is very reminiscent of Captain America Winter Soldier with the hidden base at Camp Lehigh. That was actually the same place where they had the base during Avengers Endgame in the 1970s, and it's also the same place they experimented on Captain America and gave him the super soldier serum in the first place. Most of the mystery behind what happened with Gyrich getting out of Rikers, we learned, was all Bastion, like he was behind all this. OZT on the monitor is a reference to Operation Zero Tolerance, which is the big Bastion storyline that they're adapting for a lot of the finale, where he creates the Prime Sentinels, like it's the program to create the Prime Sentinels. When Captain America refuses to go straight to Mexico with Rogue, waiting for the government, she takes his shield and just hooks it halfway across the country.
Well, if your hands are tied, you won't be needing this.
That's so she can keep him busy while she goes straight to Mexico, so he won't be able to come right after her. We go back to Genosha. This is Strong Guy from X Factor. He was also on the wall in Forge's other picture, like a lot of references to people in pictures from Forge's wall here. The really important picture, though, is the one with Bastion and Gottfried Adler. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Sunspot and Jubilee talk about how they're lying to their parents about what they're doing so they won't worry about them, sort of set up the arc of him revealing the truth of him being a mutant to his parents. There are a couple more references to the dead with Callisto and Leech here, also reminding you, foreshadowing what happened to Magneto, so you're kind of wondering now if that means that Leech is also alive too. When Beast references Tilby's tolerance of mutants, I think that's also more foreshadowing for the finale. Tolerance is extinction. Then Rogue arrives in Mexico at the mansion where Bastion has been keeping Gyrich. He claims he has no idea where Trask is. He's probably telling the truth there. It seems very compartmentalized. Bastion is just using them, making them do whatever he wants. When she questions him on Operation Zero Tolerance, he says they've also been making friends in high places. He's mostly referencing Bastion and Mr. Sinister. When he says Jean Grey's psychic probes won't work on him now because of what he did, the him he's referring to is Bastion, who is immune to telepathy because he's essentially part machine, like he's a hybrid human combination of Master Mold and Nimrod. She begins to leech his life force and also starts taking some of his memories. She sees a vision of Nimrod, which is more foreshadowing for Bastion, like I said, half Nimrod, half Master Mold. Back on Genosha, Jean Grey starts seeing visions of the attack, the Hellfire Club, Madeline Pryor, just seeing what happened to everyone. She and Cyclops talk about their complicated history together, all the WTF stuff that happened to them during the original series, like the events of the Dark Phoenix arc. Like, remember all that crazy stuff that happened? Yeah, that was terrible. They really start to make it sound like they're going to stay broken up for real this time, like they're not going to get back together, which would mean divorce maybe. Like I said, it seems like Cyclops is slowly being radicalized based on all the tragic stuff that's happened, so he might wind up leaving the X-Men team at the end of the season. She senses the telepath, thinking that it's Madeline Pryor, but to set up the big Emma Frost twist, who survived because of her ability to transform herself into the Diamond form. Beast, though, notes that this is the first time he's seen this on the series, even though in the comics she's done it a whole bunch. So on the series, he's referring to this like it's a secondary mutation for her. Mutants can have secondary mutations where their abilities either evolve, they become more powerful, or they just change in really big ways. They use Emma Frost's Diamond formed a lot during the X-Men First Class movie too. Then we get Trask contacting the X-Men himself, like cutting straight to the chase, trying to tell them everything that happened, and even though it seems like he's genuine, like he genuinely regrets what's happened, and how eventually Bastion is going to enslave the entire human race, turning them all into Prime Sentinels, really this is a trap that Bastion is setting because Trask probably doesn't know that he's been changed into a Prime Sentinel himself, and is essentially the bomb that's going to go off when the X-Men show up. This is more Bastion sort of pulling strings in the background because he knows what's going to happen in the future because he is from the future. But he starts to basically explain to the X-Men everything that he was talking about in that little ending tag scene from last week's episode where Mr. Sinister showed up and he explained that he gave him his DNA to access Master Mold and start messing with him. They take the X-Jet to Madripoor to meet him, which they featured on Falcon and Winter Soldier. It's a big location for Wolverine in the comics too, when he was pretending to be Patches, who we saw in the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer. There are actually a couple things in this episode that show up in the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer in different forms. Jubilee and Sunspot then go to his home, tell his parents that he's a mutant, and big surprise, Mom takes it pretty well, and it turns out his parents knew the whole truth the entire time and just didn't believe any of his lies. Loved all the jokes about him causing like 4 accidental fires at their homes. Like 4 of our homes caught fire after you turned 16, and there's no way we're going to believe that Somali pirates burned down your yacht. So his parents on the show seem relatively accepting, but in the comics it's a bit of a change because his father hated the idea that he was a mutant. The way they're doing that on the TV show is they're sort of keeping him, quote unquote, in the closet. Like you can sense the metaphor here, keeping him in the closet. They don't want him to get caught with the X-Men or associated with the X-Men or being seen using his powers because it will hurt their company's stock price. And you remember, they're incredibly wealthy. Then we see Nightcrawler finding Rogue laid up in an alleyway because of her visions of Bastion she'd absorbed knocked her out cold. Nearby in Mexico, they're celebrating the Day of the Dead, forcing her to deal with Gambit's death and all of that grief. When he calls her sister and she references herself as his adopted sister, it's actually for real because in the series, Nightcrawler's biological mother is Mystique, and Mystique became Rogue's foster mother when she was younger, so she really is Nightcrawler's sister. As she starts to have a good long cry about Gambit and everything that happened, they reveal the rest of her family, quote-unquote, like the family she made for herself, the X-Men, are also there to be with her. One of the things the X-Men team has in common with, say, like the Avengers in the live-action MCU movies is that the original Avengers turned into a family of sorts over the years, and the X-Men team is like that too. They're basically a family. Then we get Bastion showing up in Gyric's room, using his powers to turn on the Purple People Eater song. It's sort of like his calling card in the episode. One of his powers also is controlling machines because he himself is part machine, and he was infected with the techno-organic virus in the future that also infects Cable, and because of all of his other powers as a human hybrid sentinel, he can control other machines. The Purple People Eater song he plays is him just messing with people, like he very purposefully puts that on because he's part sentinel, which are purple, and his skin has a purple hue to it, and he's going to enslave all of humanity using the nanites to turn everyone into Prime Sentinels, so he is a metaphorical Purple People Eater. When Gyric says Rogue attacked just as he dreamt it, that's because Bastion, like I said, is from the future, like Cable. He didn't dream anything, he has knowledge of the future, so he knows how things are going to play out, so he planned for Rogue to come find Gyric. He carefully orchestrated things so that that would come to pass. Then he kills him because he doesn't really need him anymore, and he doesn't want him giving away more of Bastion's secrets, so R.I.P. Gyric seems like he's permadead this time. Even though, like I said, one of Bastion's powers is bringing people back from the dead, which he kind of does with Trask later in the episode too, when he turns him into a Prime Sentinel. The X-Men then arrive in Madripoor. Horizon is a reference to Horizon Labs. They're also featured in the Spider-Man comics. It seems like Trask dosed the entire building with sleeping gas. They start to clock that it's probably a trap, like they don't trust him, and it really is meant to be a trap, but it's a trap that Bastion sent. He knew that they would come for him, and he was going to use this as an opportunity to test out his prototype Prime Sentinel, who is Trask. But part of the idea is that he didn't tell Trask that he was going to do this, so Trask really did think that he was going to confess everything to the X-Men because he was remorseful over what had happened and what Bastion was doing. So it's another example of Bastion just sort of pulling people's strings, knowing that Trask would betray him, and just using that as an opportunity to test him out as a Prime Sentinel.
Praise be, they're never out of diet.
Zoom and enhance here, another Hulk reference. The Pingo soda is Pingo Doce soda that we saw during the Incredible Hulk movie that got dosed with the Hulk blood. Big Stan Lee cameo scene too. You remember that there was a bottle of Pingo Doce soda, like a very similar bottle, on the Secret Wars comic book during the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer. Another live-action reference too, this elevator scene of Morph slurping down the soda is very reminiscent of the Spider-Man Sinister Six elevator scene from No Way Home. This secret underground lab is Bastion and Trask's lab. All the humanoid robots are basically prototypes for the Prime Sentinels. Like, you can kind of see purple parts on them. That's why they look humanoid too, because in the comics, Prime Sentinels were essentially humans that were turned into Sentinels with nanobots. In the background, you can hear a reference to them trying to work past Asimov's law. Remember, rule number 1 is a robot cannot harm a human. In the comics, eventually the idea is that the Sentinels wipe out mutant kind as Bastion wants, like that's part of his plan, but eventually they also turn on the humans as well too, which it sounds like Trask figured out and is why he's so remorseful. The OZT badges on the guards here is Operation Zero Tolerance, like I said, from the comic book storyline. They find Trask, who's gone full Oppenheimer. They make a bunch of Oppenheimer references, not because the Oppenheimer movie just came out, like that's just a coincidence. They actually wrote this episode years ago, long before the Oppenheimer movie came out.
I made the Sentinels to protect normal people. Now I am become death.
But part of the idea is that Oppenheimer created the atomic bomb, which was used to kill a lot of people, and Trask is using the quote to also reference the Prime Sentinels, which he inadvertently helped create. Like, he created the original Sentinels, which led to the rise of Bastion eventually, like ultimately led to his creation, so he essentially is also doing the same thing that Oppenheimer did. He starts to explain Operation Zero Tolerance to them, but not fully, like they don't get the full info dump. When B says the new Prime Sentinels are light years beyond current technology, the idea is that Bastion comes from the future and used future tech to boost all this stuff. Then Rogue does the coldest thing that we've ever seen her do in anything ever and drops him, like lets him die by falling off the building. This is where the X-Men start to go full Captain America Civil War. Like I said, they're a family like the original Avengers were a family. When Captain America Civil War, the movie, came out, they likened the plot to a family essentially having a disagreement and the family breaking up. That's kind of what they're seeding here too, with half the X-Men being horrified at what Rogue did and the other half thinking that she was right to kill him. So I think just like Captain America Civil War with the Avengers breaking up temporarily, cut to season 2, we might see a totally new version, new roster of the X-Men because half the team winds up quitting at the end of the season. This Terminate Mutants voice that you hear is meant to be a version of Mr. Sinister's voice but more robotic, like it sounds very Sinister-like. But it's coming from Trask himself, who turns into a Prime Sentinel. We learned that Bastion experimented on him, used him as a prototype for an occasion like this should he ever be killed. I think the idea, like I said, is that he knew that Rogue would eventually kill him, or one of the X-Men would kill him, and just planned for the programming, the nanobots here, to take over and activate as soon as he died. When the building explodes, notice outside there's a Hammer Tech in a Roxxon building next to this, meaning Justin Hammer is canon to the series. You know all about him. Roxxon shows up pretty much everywhere, like every TV series, live action, animated. They're a natural resources company. Then we get our full-on X-Men versus Prime Sentinel Trask fight. Morph changes into Quicksilver, so we get a quick Quicksilver cameo to make as many puns as possible. I know that a lot of people are hoping to see some Magneto, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver scenes, maybe in a future season. We'll see. Like, there's so much plot happening right now, going by so quickly. Like, they're speed running so much stuff. There's not a lot of time for that stuff right now. Most of the cameos this season are just like people in the background or Morph changing into different characters. Very clever way to have all the cameos that you want, like every single character ever. Basically, this fight, though, is just to show you how powerful even one of the Prime Sentinels are, and it's just a prototype, meaning the final versions will be way more powerful. Part of the idea here, though, is that they use nanites to turn regular humans into Prime Sentinels. Bastion can create those nanites, so the idea, Purple People Eater, is he will consume the entire human race, turning them into Prime Sentinels, bringing about a slightly different version of the Days of Future Past timeline, which Cable is trying to stop. Really important detail too, Jean Grey clocks that she can actually sense Trask's original mind still alive in his body, like his consciousness is still there. That's probably because a character that we love, like a good character, will be turned into a Prime Sentinel and they'll try to rescue them, like their consciousness will still be alive inside them. All you people that want to see Gambit come back, one of the many ways that he could come back is being resurrected by Bastion and turned into a Prime Sentinel. If that were to happen, his mind would still be conscious inside his body, like he'd still be able to remember his love for Rogue, which is kind of the way things played out in the comics when he turned into one of the Horsemen for Apocalypse. That was the thing that got him to chill, like he remembered he was still in love with Rogue. Then Cyclops gets saved by his son, Cable, who takes down the Prime Sentinel with an electromagnetic grenade because he's been fighting them in the future, like they're all from the future, so he knows their weaknesses, and because Jean Grey is there, she clocks his true identity by reading his mind. I love the way that he responds to her psychically too, like in his head, he says, "Get out of my head, you're not her," because she's not Madeline Pryor, his real mother.
Nathan.
Let's skip the reunion, Dad.
Cyclops realizes that this is Nathan, his son, also confirming that during all those original cameo scenes during the original X-Men the Animated Series, nobody knew the truth because Cable kept it a secret from them. When he says Trask was working for someone worse than Mr. Sinister right now, he's talking about Bastion, who is bringing about that different Days of Future Past timeline. They want you to think that Bastion is like the real threat here, but like I said, there's still Apocalypse, who came back at the end of the series inhabiting someone else's body, is also kind of connected to one of the pictures on Forge's wall too. But at least right now, they really just want you to focus on Bastion. Then they cut to Bastion's secret base somewhere else, not sure where this is located, where he's using his future tech to monitor everything that's happening on the planet and some stuff on the other side of the universe like Professor X and the Shi'ar Empire. Notice he's also jacked into all of his tech with that big cable sticking out the back of his head. You have to remember he's a human sentinel hybrid, so he is essentially a cyborg, like part machine. And it kind of sounds like he's going to use that knowledge of Professor X being alive to turn public sentiment against the X-Men because he claims they've been lying to everyone, the world that is, by saying that Professor X is dead. During the original Operation Zero Tolerance storyline, he did something similar turning the government against mutants by using the threat of Onslaught, who's the sentient psionic entity created from the consciousness of Professor X and Magneto, which might be why he's holding him captive at the barbershop at the end of the episode. I don't know if they're going to do actual Onslaught on the TV show, but last week when Professor X showed up again, a lot of people who are big comic book fans said, are they going to do Onslaught? Is that why they're bringing Professor X back? Will he show up as Onslaught? We'll see. It looks like they're changing some of the comic book plot, so there might just be some Easter eggs for Onslaught. When Mr. Sinister references Bastion's masterpiece, he's talking about the Prime Sentinels. The prize he promised Mr. Sinister is probably the mutants to experiment on. That's Mr. Sinister's whole thing. Like, no matter what he's doing in the comics, he's always trying to create the ultimate mutant, the most powerful being in the universe. And it sounds like the reason why he needed Trask's DNA to gain access to Master Mold was to help Bastion create the Prime Sentinels. Like, that's the whole goal, ultimately, using Bastion's future tech as well.
Today, I will be answering some international fan questions from this mysteriously sexy briefcase. Let's begin. Trask was a rough draft, and his tussle with the Gene Freaks gave us invaluable tactical data for my real masterpiece.
Theo James is actually a pretty solid voiceover actor. Love a lot of the Bastion scenes here too, even though it's really early days. He calls the X-Men Gene Freaks. That's because he's a human sentinel hybrid intent on wiping them all out in a way more complete way than the villains of old did, as he makes a reference to them.
You and the villains of old have been failing since '92 to squash these pests.
Even though he doesn't come right out and say it, he kind of tips his hand to him being from the future, like he references the villains of old in '92 because that's when X-Men the Animated Series started. But here's the thing, when Mr. Sinister says, you used to be one of those villains of old, he's saying that because it's a hybrid of Master Mold and Nimrod, and Master Mold is from the original X-Men the Animated Series. But part of the idea is that Bastion is telling him, I'm using what you did, all your failures, as a roadmap because he saw them all from the future. Like, oh, I saw what happened. Now I'm going to use that to plan a better route to the future that I want to create. So here's where we get to that picture on Forge's wall with Bastion. What I think is going on here is that because Bastion is wearing the same outfit and Bastion is also a time traveler, he just traveled into the past and helped them create a lot of this early technology that led to the Prime Sentinels. Like, it was early work that he was using for the Prime Sentinels, and Forge was just a big part of helping him with that. In that same picture, the three of them there, that other doctor is Gottfried Adler, who was eventually, as we learn, killed and replaced by Mystique in Apocalypse, hinting at his connection to all this too, even though I think it's still early days for Apocalypse. He wound up coming back at the end of the series, but I think they're sort of teasing him for further off. He might not be a big villain until like season 2, but I do think that Apocalypse is involved with all this because essentially he rules that distant post-apocalyptic future. When Bastion says that he's also been selling the world a lie, that's the lie that Magneto really did not die. He saved him, captured him somehow, only making it seem like his body was vaporized. And when he's telling Magneto here to just go along with his plans, play along, it might be the show's version of Onslaught that he's trying to create, that Bastion is trying to create. Notice he also goes out on the Purple People Eater song again, like that's his big calling card. It'd be interesting to see if he uses that in future episodes too, or if it was just for this episode. But like I said, very clearly the finale is going to be a combination of Operation Zero Tolerance with the Prime Sentinels and E is for Extinction. But let me know what you think this cliffhanger is going to be on the end on. Like, obviously they'll stop Bastion in some way, but not fully. Like, it's only going to get worse for them heading into season 2. That's part of the idea. They might have some temporary victory, but something even worse will spill out of that. There were so many things that happened in the episode, so many Easter eggs, so many references, even stuff that connects with stuff that happened in the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer. So if there's anything that you spotted in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write it below in the comments. So far, the series has been great. It sounds like the finale is going to be total fire, like it is going to be awesome. Between this and Deadpool and Wolverine, X-Men fans are eating really good this year. I've got a couple other X-Men bonus videos planned this week. There's a bunch of other big stuff happening, but my episode 8 video will post next week. That'll be part 1 of the finale. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Everybody click here for my new Deadpool and Wolverine trailer videos, and click here for all my X-Men 97 episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.